everybody. I am back again with the third episode of CEO Chronicles. With me here is the man whose personality is synonymous to what I call charisma, energy, brilliant attitude. He is Mr. Percy Fick, who basically owns and he's founded a company called Evolve Business Consulting. Percy hails from South Africa, and he's brilliant at what he does. I love the clarity that he has, especially when he's running his business. He exactly knows what he needs. But today's conversation is not actually going to be about hitting that big 1 million or billions, etc. in your industry. It's actually going to be on understanding the reality of startups. Mm-hmm. How are we going to be scaling up? And, especially when people come into businesses, do they realize what it really takes to grow businesses? Is it really as rosy or not as rosy? So all of that we're going to be finding out. I am Diksha Vohra, your content queen, and happy to introduce you, Mr. Percy. Good afternoon from my time zone at least, and welcome to the show.
Diksha, thank you so much. I'm so humbled to be part of the CEO Chronicles. When you first approached me, I was super excited because I always have a story to tell. Now, you and I, before we have to start, we have to be honest, we have some things in common. Absolutely. We both love Clifton Strengths.
Yes, we love Clifton Strengths, yes.
And we love building strengths-based organizations. And that's really what it's all about, is being able to leverage the talent in each person to the maximum capacity, not focus on weaknesses, but express, discover, and just mine into people what they're naturally gifted at. Because we don't have enough time to spend on weaknesses with people. We're running out of time. So we have to really leverage what we have with people and use that to the best of our ability. So I think that's a good starting point for us to talk about how we scale up and how Evolve started. And we can navigate through that, Diksha, as much as you want to. So I'm super excited to share that from an Evolve perspective.
Thank you so much, Percy. So I'll start with the first question. Percy, you've had a prolific career. You've worked with some really big brands and all throughout your journey. And then at one point in time, you decided to say, stop, I need to evolve. I need to do something for myself. I need to do a business. What made you, obviously like say a goodbye, a good goodbye to, I'll tell you what my actual question is. It's especially when entrepreneurs get into business, they are leaving a staple salary that's coming to them every month, like a big chunk. Letting going of that and then coming into business where that at least for a year and a half, things will not be where you had left it, in terms of income, in terms of money that you're bringing home, in terms of luxury, lifestyle, everything. Okay.
Yes.
What made you take this big leap of faith?
So Diksha, this is one of the key things that I want to talk about. I've got relator in my top strengths, which means that I build my relationships on trust, and I'm brutally authentic about the way that I approach life. And the reality is that I was in the automotive industry for almost 25 years. And then I was voluntarily made redundant out of a role. And I'll be brutally honest about that. They had a layering and they were scaling down the organization. But there's a story to be told behind this whole story, because I think it's very important to be authentic about people, because there's a lot of people sitting in the same situation. Oh, I've lost my job. What do I do now? And that's a reality that many people face today. And I think I want to address that first, so we can talk from the fact that I had an amazing career. I did nothing wrong. It was nothing to do with my capability. It's part of the transformation process that companies go through to be able to either scale up or scale down. And unfortunately, I was the ripple effect. But the key point that I want to make is that I was in a comfort zone for many, many years. And that comfort zone almost gets you stuck into a reality of, I have a set salary, I have security, everything is paid by the company, and you sit on that big fat package and you just say, listen, I'm living life. But it doesn't teach you the real values of how you address life in reality. And I think this is what happened to me. And I call it the crucible experience that I went through. The crucible experience, and I don't know if you know what a crucible is, but it's a little device which you put, or a holder where you put gold in and you purify by heating it up, and you purify gold. So for me, being let go of my previous organizations after the career that I've had was actually the blessing of my life. And I'll tell you why. That crucible experience has put me in touch with more people than I have ever been, networking, collaborating, all right, just learning from and being able to help out in the last 2 years that Evolve has been established than in the 25 years of my career. So it gives you a sense of freedom to be able to love what you do and do what you love by actually getting pushed out of that comfort zone and adopting a mindset that says, okay, what am I going to do now? And I guess that is the tricky part. What do I do now? And I think that really navigates us into some of the questions that you have for me later on.
Sure. See, that's an interesting take. Now, of course, we understand you started Evolve and you've grown your business. Let's talk about some of the initial startup struggles. Okay, let's face the reality. Let's be brutally honest about what it is. So, you know what, Percy, when I actually started business, and I'll quote my father. He used to always say that with a job you can only barely manage to meet your household expenses, but if you want to grow in life and if you want to earn good money, then you can only do it through business. This is what he used to say. And that is what actually got me into business, because I was like, okay, this kind of makes sense. I made my business startup decision very early on in life. I was 25 when I started planning this whole thing, and I was 27 when I went full on operationally executing every single thing here in my brand. But years down the line, today I do realize that reality is not like what my father had shared and so on, because you obviously you're struggling daily with cash flow and getting in new clients and so on. And then at the end, a lot of times when you're looking at your accounts, you do see that it's not really where you wanted it to be, and where you had originally started, it's not really getting to there. So I want you to talk us through this reality. What do you think startup life is about? And of course, do you think it is worth it? Like, what do you think should people know before they get into this?
Diksha, I think it's very important that for me, you get many stories where people started with a zero balance, or people had a little money, or they had a provision. And I think it depends from person to person and attitude to attitude. For instance, I'll use Evolve as a perfect example. We had at least 3 years capital to be able to start the company. So we were in a good financial position to be able to cover starting Evolve as a business. So the advice that I always have for people in terms of having startup, make sure that you find something that drives your cash. Simple. However activities you have within your organization, there must be one activity that you actively niche on, pursue, and drive forward to make sure that you get the cash flow in to stimulate and support the other activities that you have within your organization. And I think that's a basic foundation just to make sure that you have the cash flow going. The reality is there are certain tough times where clients just don't pay, or clients have extended terms with you, specifically from a consulting perspective, where there might be a retainer fee or whatever, and you have to hold on to that cash. So when you have this situation and this lifestyle, what certain people have in Dubai, it means that you have to adjust some of your lifestyle. That's a reality, Diksha. When you start a company, you might not drive, and I'll use a perfect example. I went from a Land Cruiser to a Kia Rio. And I want to be real about it, but because it's not because I don't value myself or my efforts as a business, but when you run your own business, you have to create as much cash flow as you can, address the capital, the capital expenses that you have and reduce that, and the depreciating assets. And secondly, the key thing for me is I'm networking through freelance models with people. So I never own the model. All right. I help people work with me so that we keep the asset level, because I view people as assets, and the cost structure of Evolve very low. And that means that we optimize the value of what we produce. We keep the cost low, but we make sure that we have a revenue stream that is constant so that we can fund whatever we want to do to expand the business as much as possible. And that's the best advice I can give in terms of a startup company.
Brilliant. So I'm going to be diving a bit into these brilliant three things you've mentioned. One is that you mentioned that you had a capital for helping you, I mean, understanding that it'll at least keep you floating for at least 3 years. So at least you don't sink. That is
Yes.
brilliant. And I think, this is what a lot of us misunderstand, or we don't rather perceive this coming in, because a lot of times we get into business thinking that, oh, we'll start earning from day one. It doesn't happen. So, I would agree with what Percy says, that if at all we're looking at getting into business, let's at least have a contingency plan in place and a resource in place, that, okay, for at least the next 3 to 5 years, God forbid, we don't get anything, at least we're not like, out of survival mode. So that is point one. Second, I loved when you said that you have got freelancer resources to keep your costs low. Now I'm coming to that. So, Percy, when I started my business, I did indeed start with freelancers itself. We had a few
Yes.
freelance content writers and so on who were on board and who started working. One issue that I faced with them was lack of commitment. Okay.
Yeah.
Because we as an agency could be one amongst 10 people that you're working for. So they may or may not have or dedicate so much time to us, that one. Then of course, when life happens, they sometimes respond, they don't respond, they don't have that level of accountability towards the firm. And of course, there's a lot of filtration. They
Yeah.
keep coming, going, etc. How do you mitigate this?
Very simple. I don't work with anyone unless I understand their talents and strengths. Simple. It's a very simple philosophy, and it sounds too basic, but it's the reality. Every single freelancer that I've had in my organization, I know their Clifton Strengths, I know how they function, and they get interviewed because they are not just going to enter Evolve because they represent me. So timelines, everything, and with my strength of command, it makes it easy because I mitigate that risk by make sure that people understand the terms and conditions that they have with Evolve. And it's simple, Diksha. It sounds harsh, but if you don't produce the work, you don't get paid.
I agree.
Simple.
I agree.
Right? And we shouldn't beat around the bush to be saying, listen, let's be kind to people. It's not being kind. We have deliverables. And then the reality out of that, people start realizing that we serve in excellence and that we have client deadlines and that we have to make it. And I must be honest, touch wood or touch plastic, whatever this foundation is, but I've never had an issue with that by taking the mindset of making sure I interview people very well, understand their background, all right? And number three, they're Clifton Strengths, so they know how they work with me and we work together. And I'm sorry that I'm banging that drum, but it's really effective when you have a strengths-based organization like Evolve. And the other thing is, I only network with people that I've seen deliver results.
Very nice, very nice.
Sometimes they come at a fee, but let me tell you what, clients value that. So you have to mitigate the cost of what you want to produce versus what you want to deliver and manage that. And that's why that capital inflow of cash flow reserve is so important, so that you get the right freelancers on board to be able to deliver the excellence that people expect from Evolve.
So I agree. I'm going to be taking two questions from this conversation. One, we'll talk about these Clifton Strengths, and then we'll get into this whole idea of paying the employees a certain price. And it comes up very interestingly because you run an HR consultancy where you help recruit the right talent for other people. And I need to tell everyone this. Everyone who's watching me, this guy, what he does is he ensures that there is 0% attrition of your current staff, if at all you're hiring, because he uses something called Clifton Strengths. That, and he coaches your employees as soon as they are hired, so that they can tune in well with the company's culture and understand what needs to be done. So a lot of people watching this don't really know what Clifton Strength is. So we'll first have a little bit of introduction to Clifton Strengths. I have
Fantastic.
obviously benefited a lot from Clifton Strengths, and I want to know, when you say you only work with people, uh, and you get the Clifton Strengths done, I want you to elaborate on what value does getting Clifton Strengths assessment done, for whether you're full-time employees or freelancers. What value does it add to your business? So over to you, Percy.
So I think that's an amazing question, Diksha, because the reality of Clifton Strengths is we discover what people are naturally gifted at. And a simple example is, let me use an example. Does it mean because you have Maximizer and I have Command that I'm a better pizza salesperson? No, that's not the intent. Clifton Strengths is designed to have conversations with people, so we actively listen to see how we develop people. And I think that's the thing. It's not a recruitment tool, but it's a development tool, so that you can have a conversation with the people that you think of acquiring as a talent and that you want to onboard. And I think the reason why I did that is because I am very high on command and significance. So it comes across sometimes as arrogant, and not. It's not. It's just I know where I'm going. I know the direction I want to go, and I want to make a big impact. And I think when people understand how I function and I work from that perspective, they understand how to respond to me. I mean, you've worked with me and we've had some direct conversations, and we mitigate the risk by understanding what we're really good at. Now, the benefit of knowing that, both from a freelancing perspective and from a talent acquisition perspective, is the following. When I introduce this individual to his new line manager, the line manager has a comprehensive report and debrief of how to develop this individual. What a fantastic thing for an organization to do, to say, listen, you're brand new, but our entry point with this, we understand your skills, we've recruited you into this role, all right, but we want to take an active interest in developing you in the next 6 months. That's why we've had no back out so far, touch wood again, in terms of people that we've placed, because we know that the people in that side actually know this is the talents, this is what this person's all about. And also the other benefit, Diksha, is really, really important to know, is the fact that we're not having conversations with people. The gaps filter out, because they have to give me examples of how they apply their natural talents within their workplace. And that then relates back to the job scope, and then see whether that's a right fit for the client. And then, very importantly, it's also for the associate or the person being recruited to evaluate the culture of whether they fit into that organization or not.
That is
really that's the model.
Yeah. I think that as a model works really well, because especially with startups, okay, we see a lot of attrition. People come, they get their hands dirty for some time, they take that experience, then they move on. Okay. And one thing one is acquiring the right talent that startups struggle with. Second is keeping that talent. Okay, because you have a lot of these youngsters, people in their early 20s, etc.,
we have to talk about that. That's a big topic.
let's come to that. So let's come to that next, actually. So we have a lot of these like youngsters who are coming into work, and the general idea is, listen, I'll work here for a year, maximum 2. Okay, I'll upskill myself. Maybe I'll start at, say, 100 dirhams a month. No, I'm gonna leave at say 200. Okay, I'm just gonna be making that shift. I'm gonna go, so when I go out and apply in the market, they give me 3 or 4. Okay, so that's just how I increase my my salary scale, okay, by jumping from one company to the next. And I think who really suffer are the startups, because they spent all that time educating someone, training them, and then they leave. So let's talk about this.
The question, Diksha, why do they leave? That is the key. Why do they leave in the first place? Because it's not so much about job hopping. If you engage with individuals and you develop individuals from day one, right? And you have a proper career development plan, even in your startup organization, it shouldn't be a problem. And I think the risk is of where companies lose revenue or they have high costs in terms of recruitment and talent acquisition is because they don't spend time with their people. They place them in a role and say, onboarding process is not great. They place them in a role that most probably not suitable for that individual. And then that is either a small safe haven or 6 months stepping stone for that individual. And that's why it's so important to have proper conversations and proper interview cycles with people so that we determine that for the client in the first place. Now, that's a reality that we face. But Generation Z, we have to talk about that because that's typically what we're dealing with. And a biggest thing that people that leave within the first 6 months and the conversations that we're having, and I'll tell you a little story about what happened on last week when I had conversations with a few Generation Z females. And the key for us is the fact that I don't want a boss. I want someone that coaches and mentors me and walks beside me. And what we're facing in a lot of startup companies is that they step into an environment where there's a boss.
Of course.
And that's the mismatch. And that tendency means that the attrition rate increases because why am I here? I'm diverse. I need hybrid working solutions, and I'm reporting to an old mentality boss, all right, that doesn't mentor or coach me or walk beside me. So that's the first fundamental issue that we have to address for startup companies to make sure that this is how we recruit and this is how we develop people. The second component is I had conversations with these millennials, and they were so dynamic from a media company here in Dubai, a very large global company. And there were 5 or 6 of them, and we were just talking about strengths, and we were talking about their onboarding process and how it functions. And the biggest thing they said to me is, Percy, I don't want a boss anymore. I want someone to support me. I want someone to mentor with me. I want someone to walk the journey with me while I'm being developed. And I guess if we get that recipe right, you have a retainer of 3 years minimum, unless you have a proper career development cycle for Generation Z and even the millennials to filter through the organization to be able to retain them. And I think that's the reality that we face. I don't think it's that yes, they use startups as a stepping stone, but I think it's not all lost. If we do manage to develop these people and we walk a proper journey with them, they won't leave.
Okay, coming to this, how detrimental do you think are salary packages?
Oh, that's an interesting topic because it varies. It's a difficult topic, but it's a very interesting topic, Diksha. You know, we interview people on a regular basis and the dynamic is changing all the time. Let me start off with saying something about engagement strategies that we work on, and then I'll filter this back to salaries and interview concepts. So we're working currently with a very large automotive company, and we're doing engagement surveys with them. And the previous wave of surveys indicated that they feel they don't have a voice when they have in the organization. So that was the initial launch of the engagement survey and strategy. So we did that 90 days later. And once they understood the survey and they knew what it was about, guess what the next topic was? Am I being rewarded effectively? And that's now the lowest scoring engagement factor. Let's talk about the reality. What we're seeing in the world because of inflation, rental increases, all of these things are the biggest variables that are the denominators of how people negotiate their salary.
Of course, yeah.
Because we have a certain life expectation, we've elevated our life and we have to live up to that. And we get sometimes the most unrealistic request where someone has just come from a university, finished and said, listen, I want to work at office 2 days a week. All right. And I want a 50,000 dirham salary. Now that in itself is not realistic. And I think we should have a realistic conversation with people in terms of how do you develop yourself into that role. So salary scales at this stage are very all over the place. And what doesn't help us is the emerging developmental frameworks around the UAE as the other emerging markets that's stepping up. So if we look, for instance, a Middle Eastern country now that's hugely developed, all right, is paying double the salaries that's being paid in the UAE, but they stay there for 6 months and then they come back. So we defeat the fact that salary is the denominator of actual whether I stay with a company or not. So even if we offer a high salary, if the culture is not right and the engagement levels are not right with any organization, doesn't matter how much you pay them, they will leave.
Agreed.
Simple.
Yeah.
So I think to answer you is, yes, people are asking high salaries. We mitigate that conversation with the client and make sure that we get them the right role, the right fit, the right salary package that is market related. And then you attach that to a career development plan that says, this is what your outlook looks like in the next 2 years if you're a high performer.
Okay. Okay. That I think that's a very interesting take, because to be honest, I did consider myself to be a very good entrepreneur. I was like, oh, I deal with my people very nicely, and you know how their salaries are on time and they're doing their work and so on and so forth. Up until last year, when in August and September, 5 of my 10 employees left. And I was like, oh my God, what's happening? And actually, there were certain conversations I had. So one person actually left my firm because she was getting twice the salaries. For her, the salary bank was important. So she was like, this is really important for me. And then, of course, someone else was migrating, and then there were 2 people who were not happy with the way things were in the office, and so I had this deep introspection, like is money really a very important determining factor that would actually help me retain people with higher salaries, help me retain them? That's when I realized that no, the whole company culture, engagement with the employees, acting as a coach or a mentor is really important, which unfortunately a lot of entrepreneurs let go of. They hire and then they feel that, okay, fine, they will work on their own. So let me actually just do my work and, distance myself from them. That's a brilliant realization. I'm going to come back to a point that we had discussed that was about your business and how you're growing it. Obviously, you come from a very, a hardcore automobile environment in your past, an experience wherein you worked with big brands who have had massive offices and a lot of staff working in from them. And so obviously it adds on to their branding and the kind of clients they approach and they deal with and so on. Now, coming to Evolve, you said that you have an asset-light model approach. You also deal with freelancers, etc. Do you feel it is difficult to penetrate into large organizations, because then they ask you, where's your physical office space? How many people are working for you? And what is their experience and so on? So does the overall flashy creation of an office, of a brand, really impact, or in fact even influence attraction of high-paying clients or good clients?
Look, it's a yes and a no. It depends from client to clients. And that sounds like I'm sitting on the fence, but my experience is that you don't need flashy offices. It's the message that you really give in terms of, if you have an authentic message and you have a clear message of where your company is going. I sat on a pitch for a very large company last week. I walked out of there, all right, with the freelancer credentials that I have. And initially the conversation was, listen, we don't deal with people like you. I said, okay, give me a minute. Let me explain. Let's understand your gaps. Let's understand the problems that you're trying to solve, right? Within half an hour, we walk out and the lady tells me, you're a perfect fit for our organization. And I think it's just a matter of pushing through and remaining confident. And Diksha, it's so important to network with the right people.
Yes.
Surround yourself with the right people, because when you start delivering results, you have to show people those results. You have to show the results in a tangible way that people can see that it's authentic and it's not just fictitious, because there's a lot of things that's being put on social media that's absolutely not real. And I think once people, understand the recipe of authentic leadership from a business model, they understand how you function and you work and what your intent and your purpose and your vision and missions are aligned with theirs, it makes it easier. But to answer you, it is a bit more difficult to get into larger organizations and it takes a bit more time. But the way to do that is don't start big. Yep. Take small baby steps. Work closely, take one step at a day and get closer, and then start surrounding, as your fund and cash flow improves, with the right people. I mean, that's why I got Dr. Michelle van Tonder and Dr. Anthony van Tonder, highly skilled people on board to freelance with us to work to build this brand Evolve. And that's how it works. So baby steps in the beginning, build your name, build your brand, make sure you get the right people to help you build your brand, network at the right networking events, not the wrong ones, all right, and meet the right people and tell them about your story. People love stories. And I think this is what Evolve is true about, is that we start humble and we're slowly stepping up and we're getting there where we're closing in on the corporate and organizations to say, oh, you're a candidate, right? But it takes time, right? Now, if you know people, you might get there quicker. But in my instance, I took the long, windy route because I wanted to learn to see how we navigate around this economy and the cultures that we face within the UAE. So that's my advice to people. Start small, but start effective and get the right people that surrounds you to keep you motivated and keep you positive.
So in your opinion, from a startup stage where you're like at 0.0, and then where you're comfortable with what you're earning and you're growing, your business is valuated at a great price. How long on an average does this journey realistically take for majority of the entrepreneurs?
3 years.
3 years.
3 years. 3 years it takes, because the first year I will describe as finding your feet, networking. Second year, you start delivering products and people are starting to see what you do. And what's her name? The recruitment portion is pretty fast because recruitment is recruitment and talent acquisition for clients. So that started off quickly because I remember I spoke about the revenue and finding that thing that is a quick act. But if you look at all the product offering of Evolve, we're now in the phase where we're moving closer to saying, listen, we have a very, very good product, because the second year is your learning. So first year is finding your feet, second year is your learning, and the third year is your glory period, where you go out, you meet people, you tell them about your product, you showcase your product, you've got testimonials of talking about what you've done. Then you have a success recipe. But my biggest advice, be authentic about your product. Don't come and tell people a story about you doing something and it's not what you're doing, because people will see right through that.
My final question, and this is going to be extremely, something that I think you'd find very interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you start the business to earn money, or did you do it because you were highly passionate about it?
Fantastic question. What do you think I'm going to say?
I'll tell you what, I've had this realization over the past few days. And, we were obviously discussing why a lot of people do businesses. And I mean, as much as I know you, I think you're doing it more for passion, less for money. But God knows if I'm correct.
So if we do a program that's called Values through a very good friend of mine that is a product offering of us. So I constantly talk about what we do. And that means that I'm remaining true to the products that I offer. So one of my key values is that I'm a very political individual. And political doesn't mean I'm a politician. It just means that I have an absolute heart for people. And that's my biggest value as a person. And I often ask the question, Diksha, just test it. Ask people what their purpose is. They can't answer you. Many people know.
I agree.
Yeah.
We don't know our mind. Yeah.
And they tell you it's my job. No, it's impossible. Your personal purpose can be aligned with your job. And that's where you find where Percy is. And that's how I started the company. Once I started realizing that I'm a catalyst for change, all right, and I found that there's a match between that and my purpose, and then I aligned that with my company direction. I built it on purpose and passion. And really, that is the heart of Evolve. And if you allow me, I will just explain the vision that we had when we built Evolve, because it's important for people to visualize, to answer whether I'm passionate or not. When I first designed the logo of Evolve, I went through various options. So eventually I got to a dandelion. A dandelion is a flower that goes through evolution itself. And it's a real flower that you pick in the grass, in the grasslands. but it goes through a phase where it has these spongy feathers on it, and you pick it and you blow on it. So the vision was that we create this catalyst of change approach for people by blowing the seed of what we know, this passion, the Clifton Strengths, the value-based training, the recruitment, and that seed travels 120 kilometers away. And then it grows and it lands in the ground and it grows and it produces another flower, and it goes through the whole cycle of evolution as well. So evolve is constantly evolving, right? But what we built it on was passion and the love for people. And I think once you have that recipe, it's authentic. And then whatever you do in excellence will translate into the revenue that you need to be able to do what you do, because people believe in you. People can see your heart. They can see the authentic leadership that you have as an individual. So for me, Dr. Anthony Fontana will disagree with me because he's our economical value specialist. And I brought him on board to help us balance that, because there must be a balance between passion and economical values. Right? They must. You can't ignore and just be passionate about people and underprice yourself in the market or offer a product below what it should be. And I don't need to preach to the converted, but find that balance. But for me, Evolve was built on passion.
Awesome. Awesome. Sounds good. Thank you so much, Percy. This was such an engaging conversation, extremely insightful. I think we've, collected so many golden nuggets during this. And I'm quite certain a lot of the entrepreneurs watching this would really take home some very important insights. Thank you for being with us.
They're allowed to disagree, right? Because we're all different. We all have different strengths. So I tried my best to be able to say how we built the foundation. And Diksha, thank you. I'm so humbled and for this opportunity to be part of your CEO Chronicles. It really means a lot to me. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. So guys, up until next week, this is Percy. If you want to get in touch with him, the easiest thing is go onto LinkedIn, type Percy Fick Evolve, and you can message him. He's super responsive. He gets back to you. And so that's one. Second is go to Evolve Business Consulting is on Google.
So it's Evolve Consulting Services. So that is on Google. It is on all the social media platforms as Evolve Through Us. And then obviously we have the website, which you can fill in a contact form. It's the easiest way to get hold of us, is www.evolvethroughus.com. So we will get back to you in a snap. That's how we work, and mindset.
Very well. So Percy is your go-to person if at all you have anything that you require in terms of HR consultancy, building your employees, hiring, retaining them. I recommend his services out and about. So next week we have another interesting speaker, and this one you would be looking forward to as well. So up until next time, I say a goodbye. Take care. Thank you very much. Thank you.